Welcome, everybody. I'm Michelle Cummings with Personify Leadership, and I'm so excited that you joined us today. And today we're going to talk about the 8 core competencies of the Personify Leadership Core program. Personify is 13 years old, and our core program really does focus on those 8 behaviors that leaders are just essential for leaders to be effective with the people that they lead. And so there's several ways to engage with us. We can either come out and do a program, a direct engagement for your leaders. We have an open enrollment program where you can come through and join the class with lots of other people that might either be vetting the course, or if you just want to come through it yourself as an individual leader. And we do have a train the trainer program to where you can become certified in our program. And we also have a podcast. I can tell you all kinds of great things about our program, but it's best to hear it from our clients themselves. So our podcast, Leadership Personified, is where I interview several of the organizations that have implemented our program internally, and just to see the difference that they've made. Our most recent one is with one of our Filipino clients, Ernest Q with Globe Inc. They put 2,800 of their leaders through their program. They're an 8,500 person organization, and really we're going for some deep culture change in their organization and had some amazing results. One of the things they were measuring was they wanted to see if implementing something that's focused on soft skills, people's soft skills, would it increase, decrease, have any effect on their attrition rate? And they were happy to report they went from an 11.4% attrition rate down to 8.2 in a year and a half by just implementing and really helping their leaders focus on people skills. So it was fantastic, and really that's what what research will show you, that where people need to spend their dollars. And so our program, we focus on what it takes to be a great leader, and our program's a little bit different than all the other programs that are out there because of our experiential nature, the way that we get people invested physically, mentally, all of that into the program. And the research that supports, like, you've got to develop your people from the soft skill level, is that research that came out of Harvard just recently in 2023 is that 85% of your success as a leader comes from your soft skills, and 15% of how skills that you need to do your job. And surprisingly, in 2023, US employers, they spent $98 billion on employee learning, and only 27.6 of it was spent on those soft skills. So really, it really just kind of helps to identify, like, where do we need to focus our dollars on training our people. And when they interviewed people, personal qualities of their leaders were mentioned 7 times more than the job specific knowledge. So with that, and especially as AI starts to really kind of grow, and as automation and all of that develops, that really the soft skills, things that machines can't do, those skills are becoming more valuable than ever. So based on that, that's really where our program focuses. So in our program, we start with the heart of a leader. It's one of those modules that, when you really think about it, leadership from the heart. We talk about how to be a leader whose intention is to really look out for the best interest of others. So we do that through, we surface that behavior through an experiential activity that really does surface it so well. We catch people in this little behavior of, are we looking out for number one? Are we looking out for others? Like, how we do that. So we talk about in this module, what signals are we sending? How do I show up as a leader? Do my signals prioritize what's in my best interest, in the team's best interest, or in the organization's best interest? And how do we make sure that, and we also talk about, how do we lead with other people first, our team members first, not excluding ourselves, because that's important, but really, how do we build trust and respect amongst those that we lead, and just having that good crash course in self-awareness around how do I show up in the world. And so in the next module, in our mind module, we really talk about how to be a leader who's emotionally resilient. Do I have that mental and emotional agility that is required of leaders? We introduce this stress curve where we talk about what does our performance look like based on our stress level? What are my stress triggers? How do they affect the way that I lead and communicate with my team? And we really go over, like, the skill set that we teach in this is around how do we manage that stress? Because stress is inevitable, it's going to happen. So, how do we make sure that we're managing that in a way that is visible and that I can have good self-awareness around it? So we bring in a couple models. We talk about internal versus external locus of control. Where does my mind naturally go? Do I go to a problem-solving mindset where where I'm really focusing on things that I can do something about? Or do I go to the external locus of control, more that blaming, or that does my mind naturally spiral and go to those things that I can't control, I can't do anything about? And so it's a really good piece of self-awareness for leaders to understand what does their brains naturally do. And we have a few experientials that really do surface this really naturally to help people really feel it, own it, and then reflect on it, and then make some plans on how to manage that in the real world. So in the Voice of a Leader module, this is one of my favorites. Of course, they're all my favorites, but I really love the voice module. And in this one, it's our effective communication module. So we start with voice, and then we naturally go right to ears, because you have to have both of those in order to be an effective communicator. So in the voice, we talk about being a leader who communicates a message that resonates with those who receive it. So we bring in a lot of great research around Albert Morabian's sender and receiver model, and get them to understand that the way that we communicate, how we communicate, the mediums that we choose to communicate with matter. And we can almost calculate the percentage of how much of our message is going to get through based on the way we receive our message. And texting and email is a very popular way, but guess what? It so much gets lost in translation when we only have the text. We don't have the voice, the tone, the emotion, the body language, all the other things that make up effective communication. So we also bring in, we do a DISC assessment that we use Wiley as our DISC vendor. And this is one of the assessments that we have in our course. And it really helps leaders understand what is their personal communication preference, their personal behavior preferences on how they like to interact with others out in the world. And then we get them to think about, in this module, how do I communicate a message that resonates with others? And as a leader, I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm communicating in a way that is just not in my preference, but I understand how do the people, my direct reports, or my peer level, or even my manager, the people that I report to, how am I communicating in a way that's going to resonate with them? And it's not the same for everyone. So we have a couple of great experientials for this, and really have this message come through really clearly. We also have some great job aids that we leave with all the participants, so that they really have a great understanding of how to try to identify what other people's styles are, even if they haven't taken the DISC assessment as well. So in the ears module, then of course we focus on the other side of that equation, and we talk about, how do I be a leader who truly listens to others? And we bring that same model back in, but now we look at it from the other side of it. When people are communicating with me, I have a responsibility to be a true listener. And so we have this fantastic self-assessment that we have. I don't know how many leaders, thousands of leaders that have been through this training, that they're like, oh yeah, I think I'm a pretty good listener. And then we have them take our listening self-assessment, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a development area for me. Like, it's definitely one that once you take it, because we naturally, very organically have them take this assessment. And then not knowing, of course, that all their true false answers, they're self-identifying in the moment. Am I a true listener, or do I have some of these styles of interruption to listening styles that we identify, 6 of them, and most of them walk away with a minimum of 2 or 3 of those listening interruption styles that are the way that they show up in the world. And so it's a great module for them to really understand the type of listener that they are. And this one really hits home for leaders. So then we move into the hands of a leader. And in this module, we talk about how to be a leader who provides that direction and support. So we talk about all the things that you're juggling on a day-to-day basis as a leader, and really get them to identify and understand that as a leader, whether you've just been newly promoted to leadership, or whether you've been a leader for a long time, part of a responsibility of being a leader is getting work done through others. We can't take it all on ourselves. So we walk through an effective delegation module, template, or delegation modes here. So, and really get them to understand the 3 different types of delegation: hands-on, hand in hand, or hands-off, and tell them how they can use it as a developmental process. If someone that doesn't have the skill set, but you want them to eventually get the skill set, you can start at hands-on, move your way through until eventually it becomes a hands-off. But a lot of leaders, if they're newer to a leadership position, sometimes this is um, new information for them, because if they've gone just from being everyone's peer level or they're everyone's bud, now all of a sudden they're the boss, getting work done through others, it can be a challenge if they don't know how to do it effectively. Because most people are hired up in an organization because they were really good at their jobs and not because they have great leadership skills. So these are definitely the core foundational skills that we have to develop in others. So, and really the intent behind each one of these, hands-on is to develop knowledge, skills, and abilities. Hand in hand is more to deepen, and then hands off is more to leverage those knowledge, skills, and abilities. And we also talk about what happens when people don't delegate. They get stuck in what we call the delegation doom loop. And really what that is I don't delegate because I don't know, it's just faster for me to do it, myself, because nobody else can do it the way I do it. So the delegate doesn't have the skills. And then so I continue to not delegate, and so they remain unskilled, and then I just get stuck in this. It never leaves my plate because I don't like push it off onto anybody else or delegate it to somebody else, because I'm stuck in this loop. So we get them to identify where are some areas where you are stuck in that delegation doom loop, and what do you need to do differently in order to take the time that it takes to effectively delegate it to somebody else. And then from there, we move into the feet of a leader. And this is a module where we really talk about being a leader who walks the talk, and talk about um, accountability. That's a strong message that we send through this one. How to hold other people accountable. We bring in a little brain science around mirror neurons, and how people will absolutely follow what they see you do rather than what you say. We have a fantastic experiential that surfaces this really naturally. But we really get them to think about, like, what's that victim leader mindset where we're like, oh, well, that's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. That blaming victim leader mindset versus that accountable leader mindset. And this ties back to the mind module where we talk about that internal versus external locus of control, and how accountable leaders really do. If something happens that we don't like, we need to look at it. We're like, okay, I don't like what happened. What do I need to do differently so that doesn't happen again? Versus, oh, that happened. It's like, well, that wasn't my fault. That's so and so. That was accounting's fault, or that was a different team department's fault. So rather than blaming, we go to the accountable leader mindset and really look at, when is it difficult to hold other people accountable, and then what do I need to do to then break that cycle of blaming and whatnot. Take accountability, whether it's for my team, my organization, or myself, because if we don't do it, what happens when we don't hold other people accountable? So, they make excuses instead of problem solving. That victim mentality comes in. If performance issues go unaddressed, it can really lead to resentment. And this is where we start hearing those words around toxicity, and how the culture of our organization, it doesn't feel good to work here anymore. So we really bring in some great skills on how to manage this in yourself and in others, especially if you have others on your team that might have that blaming mentality rather than accountable leader mentality. And then we move to the spine of a leader after that, and we really talk about how to be a leader who's courageous in tough times. And we pull in a little bit of systems thinking, some research around how, just if you're in a middle of the organization, we talk about tops, middles, and bottoms, like in all three of those roles, what does it feel like? What are the conditions that live in each one of those places in an organization? And then how do customers and others influence the conditions that live in those spaces? And we talk about how being in the middle, if that's where you're at, and even if you're at the top, even if you're in the C-suite, sometimes you're also still in the middle, because if you report to a board, or if you're publicly traded, or things like that, sometimes you'll still feel some of those conditions of the middle space, to where it doesn't always feel good to experience those conditions. But courageous leaders know how to navigate those inherent challenges within a system, and behave in a way to where then the negative outcomes of that don't affect you. If you don't want to be perceived as confused or powerless or wishy-washy, then you've got to behave in a way that people don't respond that way to you. So we then ask people to come prepared with a scenario, a courageous conversation that they need to have with somebody at work. And we actually let them practice that courageous conversation in class. And we intentionally do this module as our seventh module in the course, because we utilize the other six skills: the heart, the mind, the voice, the ears, the hands, the feet, as we build up to the spine of a leader. And we have them practice all the skills that we've taught them thus far in the course and putting all of that into our courageous conversation. You have to be a good listener. You have to be an effective communicator. You have to consider what your intent is. You have to be emotionally resilient. What is the biofeedback of yourself as well as the person that you're having the conversation with? And how do we support them? And how do I hold myself accountable going into this meeting? So all of the competencies are very metaphorically connected. And it's another thing that makes our program very easy to remember and implement once you get back into the real world, because they're not a lot of not a lot of complicated four-letter acronyms you have to remember. Like metaphorically, we walk around with these skills every single day. So it's easy for people to implement when they go back to the real world. And then our final module that wraps it up is the eyes of a leader. So be a leader who has a vision for the future. What does leadership look like now that you've got a new skill set, or at least a little bit more of an awareness of how you show up in the world as a leader? Where are your strengths? And where are your development opportunities that you could step up and be a little bit better? So we bring in more research. Every single module has research to back up and models and things that they can go back and really implement in the real world. This particular model we talk about is one from the book called When Teams Work Best. And Dr. Carl Larson and Frank LaFausto, they're professors out of the University of Denver that interviewed 36,000 team members from 6,000 teams to really understand what, if they took similar size organizations and this team worked fabulously, they had most success, and this team, same size organization, but they experienced failure, what was the difference between them? And what they found was the most successful teams have really clearly defined goals that everybody could recite if asked, like, what's the goal of the team? They know it. Really clearly defined, achievable goals. And then you had three forms of energy all funneled straight towards those goals. Your mental energy, that is your intellect, your know-how. Do you know how to do your job? Your physical energy is your stamina, and do you have the physical capabilities to do your job? And then spiritual energy is more of your team spirit, the motivation or desire to actually do the work. And when all three forms of those energy, all three of those forms of energy funneled straight towards clearly defined goals, those were the teams that were the most successful. And then the one other thing that they did, it's called the drain model, because they also identified what would be the things that would drain or pull our energy away from actually achieving those goals. And if you identify those ahead of time, sometimes you can either eliminate or mitigate those when you're setting your goals. So that way, when they do pop up, you're prepared for them. And having that skill set as a leader is so important, that then you also then help manage those same behaviors in your team. And it really can help set you and your team and then the organization up for success. So, and then after all of this, we go into a goal setting session where we really do get them to think about what does leadership look like for me now? And so we have them set a goal, and then whatever it could be a 90-day goal, it could be a big, whatever their big vision is that they want to accomplish. And then we bring in this quote: well, vision without execution is just hallucination. It's one of my favorite quotes when it comes to goal setting. And so we then have them take that big goal, and then what are your first steps? We have them set that into 30, 60, and 90-day goals. What can they accomplish in the next quarter in order to make the small steps to try to get towards that larger goal themselves? We also have them pick an accountability partner right there in class. So, and then we have them set check-ins on their calendar so that they're checking in every other week or so with their accountability partner, to just have somebody external from their team help keep them accountable to their goals. And then we have them walk away with great support tools post-program. So we have a mobile coaching tool that we call Mobile Manny. Manny is a character that we follow through the course that people fall in love with. He's a leader, just a very, really relatable storyline of a leader that we kind of incorporate throughout the entire program. And so afterwards, they text into Mobile Manny, and Mobile Manny is AI generated, and they can ask him questions about the course and what they learned, and Manny will give them some great advice. And now I will, full disclosure, I am Mobile Manny. I created all of the so even though it's Manny, it's actually Michelle, and I created all the prompts and fed our AI. So it's a gated AI, so it only pulls from our material. And then we also give them a copy of the Courageous Leader book, which was written by my co-founder of Personify, Angela Siebely, And in this book, it's multiple chapters where it talks about the courage to delegate, the courage to have that courageous conversation. And at the end of every chapter, there are discussion questions. So you could use it as a lunch and learn with your team. And it's a really fantastic book that supports all 8 of the competencies in the course. We have lots of job aids that we give them. Some declaration and feedback cards are another tool where they take those home with them and to elicit feedback from people on the new skills that they are demonstrating and working on their development areas. And then we have a new tool that we're just launching this next month called the Conversational 360. And it's around why wait for performance review to get feedback from your team? Why don't you just have them in one-on-ones on a regular basis in team meetings? So they are different questions that could be included in a 360-degree feedback tool, but they're in cards to where you can just ask the questions in the moment and one-on-ones. And instead of waiting for that 360-degree assessment or for a performance review, why don't we just get ongoing feedback? It'll help you practice those listening skills and really give you some good, honest, ongoing feedback from the people that you work with, whether it's peer level, your manager, you can give them to ask these questions of your manager or of your direct report. So it's a new fun tool that we've got launching this next month. So, and speaking of that, our next opportunity just to experience the program itself, we are an international company. We do have certified facilitators in 26 countries around the world. Our materials have been translated into multiple languages. And so, but our next opportunities in the next few months is we have one class in Brisbane, Australia, and then another in Frederick, Maryland coming up in June. And post after that, Jamie, who's here on the call, is if you want to schedule more time just to learn a little bit more about the program, or just really, Jamie's going to be your go-to guy to talk about matching up what some of your KPIs are or anything of the goals that you have internally at your company. Jamie is so gifted at being able to really help you match up, like what is it that your current organizational goals are and matching it to the competencies to let you know whether or not it's a great fit or not. So there's a QR code to just schedule more time on Jamie's calendar. And then there's his email address as well, where you can follow up with him.